Friday, everybody. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com, live once again from home, as the majority of us, I would think, are. This is your goldenblack.com Daily Quarantine Simulcast, brought to you by our friends Follett's Purdue Bookstores, Purdue Federal Credit Union, 6th Street Dive Restaurant, First Source Bank, East End Grill, and the Charters Team Remax Ability Plus. I want to remind you, of course, again, the 6th Street Dive Restaurant in Lafayette remains open for carryout, as do our longtime friends of the business, Arnie's and Bruno's, as well as the Whitaker Inn in West Lafayette. Please keep them in mind. If you're looking to support our local businesses, you're looking for damn good food, or both, please keep them in mind. If you're new to the show, and I'm sure our viewership is just exploding right now, what we're doing is we're just picking out a Purdue topic each day. Hopefully I'm going to have enough Purdue topics to get us through this indefinitely. I will add, however, nothing's going on. There are no sports going on. Most of us can't leave our houses, and we had 8 stories yesterday on our website about Purdue, yesterday at goldenblack.com. So if you're interested in such things, please check out goldenblack.com. Anyway, hopefully I'll have enough Purdue topics to every day get through this in a compelling manner. If not, I have some recipes, I have some song lyrics. I can just start the camera here and I can just read off. But what we're going to do today is we used a little emerging conversation mechanism that's sort of going around the internet, and it's all the rage these days on our site last week, where you tier Purdue players or players of whatever school you're talking about by an assigned price, and you give people 15 fake dollars and you ask them to put together their ideal lineup for the school being discussed. So what I did was I put that question on our message boards. I asked people to reply in depth. And the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was getting his readers to do his own work for him. So what we did was we took that, we copied and pasted it, we put our name on it, and we used it as a content item, one of those 8 content items on. I hate the word content. It is one of my pet peeve words. I kick myself inside every time I use it. I hate that word. But anyway, I digress. So what we did was we posted that on our website, thinking that people might want to read that. It might be interesting. It might strike some nostalgic chords with people. It might get people thinking about past Purdue teams they enjoyed watching, and it would be a valuable thing. I know this thing blew up. I originally put the question on our message board, but then also my personal Twitter account. And before I could even correct the thing I posted, spell all the names right, accurately, or best put the guys in their right price range, remember all the players even, I had like 20 responses. It blew up. So what I wanted to do for today's Daily Quarantine was just kind of talk about that and some things that I took away from what people were, how people picked their teams, but also give you my own teams, which I did in my column last week, but figured I would use that as a token to get through another one of these videos. A couple of things from the teams people chose. I think obviously recency bias always comes into play. The freshest thing in mind is typically what people often gravitate toward. I think Carson Edwards obviously was a guy who last year's NCAA tournament vaulted into Purdue legend status, as if being a 2-time All-American hadn't already done that. He was a very popular pick, obviously. A lot of people chose him over the others in the $5 category. That's the most, $5. Caleb Swanigan, Juwan Johnson, Robbie Hummel, E'Twaun Moore. I wanted to make that price category only the All-Americans, but I could not, in good faith, put E'Twaun Moore in a different category. I believe E'Twaun Moore might have been a third team at one point. The other guys, I think, I'm probably misremembering that. I think E'Twaun Moore, now that I think about it, did get an All-America honor at some point. So I just scratched the last 30 seconds of this video from your consciousness. Anyway, the $5 category was Carson Edwards, Caleb Swanigan, Juwan Johnson, Robbie Hummel, and E'Twaun Moore. A lot of people of those 5 gravitated toward Carson Edwards, and I think that was probably a lot had to do with, he was the most fun to watch probably of those 4 guys, and his NCAA tournament last year was obviously stuff of legend. But a lot of people wanted to build their teams around Carson Edwards. A sound strategy, considering a team built around Carson Edwards last year, took Purdue further in the NCAA tournament. than it had been since the turn of the century. I think this is going to be bittersweet to hear at this point in time, but Matt Harms got a lot of picks simply because you have to make some decisions on your money, and I think at $2, Matt Harms was a value pick, and I think people understood the rim protection, the ball screen defense, the length, the ability to shoot threes, just the versatility you had there with him. I was very surprised how many people gravitated toward Matt Harms, coming off what really, for him, by his standards, thanks in large part to injuries, was a pretty mediocre season by the standards I know he expected of himself and Purdue expected of him. Grady Eifert got a lot of picks, which is bizarro world considering where Purdue was a year and a half ago when he was the favorite target of fans who feel the urge to cannibalize their players online. I think people really came to understand his value. And I think at the start of last season, people didn't understand his value. And I think he was largely the same player at the end of the year that he was at the beginning of the year, but everything around him improved. People, that team sort of came together a little bit. Guys embraced roles, and that magnified his value. And people in a contest of all the best players Matt Painter's had at Purdue, Grady Eifert got a lot of picks. And Grady Eifert wasn't a $1 player. I put him at $2 because I thought coming out of last season you could have justified an all Big Ten pick on him, because I don't know if anybody in the Big Ten made more big shots than he did, other than Bohannon at Iowa. I think he was such a big part of what made Purdue good. The stats obviously didn't justify an all Big Ten pick, but I think value to his team, I think you could have justified a third team, last guy on the ballot sort of pick. I had to pick a third team choice for Purdue last year on my all Big Ten ballot. I went with Matt Harms over Nojel Eastern and the ceremonious Grady Eifert pick. I think I had Ryan Klein on my second team. He got completely hosed by not being an all Big Ten player, in my opinion. No, I'm sorry, I had Ryan Klein on my third team. Anyway, I digress considerably. Obviously, this whole thing ran the gamut of players from all over the Matt Painter era. A lot of people took Ryan Klein as well. Again, I think the freshest teams in mind, I think players' values were particularly fresh in mind. I think Isaac Haas got a lot of picks. I think people understood he was the starting point. He was the most impossible matchup of the Matt Painter era. I think a lot of people want Robbie Hummel because I think Robbie Hummel tears a lot of people or pulls at a lot of people's heartstrings. I think they just love the kid, which how can you not? Caleb Swanigan obviously got a lot of picks as the building block on a lot of teams. I don't know if anybody's had a better season individually than Swanigan's sophomore year at Purdue. There have been a lot of great ones. But as I said before, in the $5 category, a lot of people gravitated toward Carson Edwards when really, his season last season was a really uneven season. It's just that the NCAA tournament was his absolute best. He was absolutely brilliant. And I think that's what people remember more than anything. My team, since I know you're on the edges of your seats wondering how I would have answered this question, I kind of got nerdy about it and considered elements of games. And I went with Juwan Johnson as my center. I went with Grady Eifert as my forward. And then I put Ryan Klein, Lewis Jackson, and Keaton Grant around them as three guards, basically. The reason I did that was multi-layered, shall we say. One, I wanted a mobile big man who could still block shots. I wanted to stretch the floor with jump shooting, which Juwan Johnson gives me better than any other big guy on the list. Obviously, Caleb Swanigan was a great three-point shooter. A.J. Hammonds could shoot jump shots, but among those guys, I wanted the more mobile, the longer center, largely to guard ball screens. I want a mobile big man who could contain the dribble above all else defensively, and I think he gave me my best chance to do that. Offensively, obviously, he was a great player as well. And then in terms of the supporting cast around him, I went with Eifert at forward, largely because I could afford him at $2. There was value there, but also another guy who stretches the floor, only shoots when he's wide open, often is wide open when you have to focus on other people. always makes the right pass, doesn't turn the ball over, great decision maker, great effort guy. I want offensive rebounding. Offensive rebounding has been such a big part of what has made Purdue good the last couple of years that people never talk about. And on my fake theoretical paper team, I wanted offensive rebounding. So I went with Grady Eifert for $2. I went with Ryan Klein for $3 because I want an elite shooter out there. I want jump shooting. I want the floor spread. I want room for Juwan Johnson to play pick and roll, to dive to the basket, and I want an elite pick and roll passer to get him the ball. So I went with Ryan Klein. He was a savant-like pick and roll passer, but also an elite shooter to me. I wanted Dakota Mathias, but for the $1 less, I didn't see a whole lot of trade-off. I didn't see a lot of drop-off from Dakota Mathias to Ryan Klein. Lewis Jackson, obviously maybe not the shooter that some other Purdue guards were, but I want good pressure on the ball. I want a guy who's going to get the ball where it needs to go. I want great decision-making, and I want a guy who's good in ball screens, a guy who can get downhill off of those ball screens with Juwan Johnson, who's going to get Juwan Johnson the ball going downhill to the rim. But more than anything, I want good pressure on the ball defensively. He was really good at that. I know he was small, and that was a defensive limitation at times for him. But he was a great decision maker with the ball. He was a really good defensive player. And in situations where some defensive matchup issues might present themselves, that's why I took Keaton Grant with my fifth pick, because Keaton Grant is the opposite of Lewis Jackson. He was a big physical guy who would literally get nose to nose with you, pressuring the ball, a good defensive player on the ball. And if I need to move a bigger, more physical guy onto the ball, I would move Keaton Grant over and then find somebody for Lewis Jackson, the guard. Would have loved Nogel Eastern, but I went with Keaton Grant over Nogel Eastern simply because I wanted a little bit more of a jump shooter out there. Keaton Grant was a productive shooter. He had a great sophomore year. Overall, he wasn't the most consistent shooter throughout the entirety of his career, but he was a damn good shooter. He's going to make jump shots for me. He is going to do a pretty decent job taking care of the basketball based on his body of work at Purdue. And I have surrounded Juwan Johnson with 3 really good three-point shooters, some quickness in Lewis Jackson, and I think a team that can be pretty good running ball screens on offense and guarding ball screens on defense. So that's why I did that. I know that is fascinating, but I think this has been a really, really interesting conversation piece that people have enjoyed. So I figured I would just milk as much out of it as I possibly could. This was our content equivalent of which NFL quarterbacks are elite, who would we put on our Mount Rushmore of whatever. Just a really effective, if not a little bit silly, conversation device for times like these. We have wanted, obviously, to keep people talking about Purdue, even though nothing's going on. Not that anything would be going on right now anyway after the season. So I thought this was a really interesting thing that people responded to and wanted to take it a little bit further by doing this video on it. So that's what I got. This has once again been your goldenblack.com Daily Quarantine. By the way, the conversation on this isn't over either. So if you are interested, feel free to put in the comments here your $15 team. You can go to goldenblack.com. I posted those responses. That will have the menu on there, for lack of a better term. So if you want to go to our message boards, tell us your ideal Purdue $15 team, or the comments on YouTube, Twitter, whatever it may be, have at it, man. Whatever keeps you guys talking about Purdue, thinking about Purdue, that's the whole goal here. We're trying to entertain people here to get them through life being on pause. So once again, I'm rambling here. Our goldenblack.com Daily Quarantine. Thanks for watching. Thanks for reading. This has been brought to you once again by our sponsors, Falls Purdue Bookstores, Purdue Federal Credit Union, the 6th Street Dive Restaurant, First Source Bank, East End Grill, and the Charters Team Remax Ability Plus. Want to remind everybody, too, that the 6th Street Dive in Lafayette remains open for carryout business, Arnie's and Bruno's as well, in addition to the Whittaker Inn in West Lafayette. So once again, if you're looking for damn good food, or if you're looking for just a chance to support the local economy, please keep please keep the 6th Street Dive, Arnie's, Bruno's, and the Whitaker Inn in mind. So thank you, everybody. We'll talk to you again next week. I hope everybody has a great weekend. I hope everybody recognizes the fact it is the weekend. Take care.